Okay, so I just want to give a little introduction. We started the recording. So I'm Edwin Rutsch, the director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and also had started the Extinction Rebellion Empathy Circle work group. And we're also looking, one of our projects is to look at how to use empathy-based conflict mediation in Extinction Rebellion. And I'm here with Adrian, and you have a conflict with XR. So I wanted to just model empathic listening, just to hear whatever it is that, whatever issues you have. And our intention is sort of an empathy circle, pre-circle, with the intention of creating a culture of empathy, and which means for everyone to feel heard and understood to their satisfaction, and to foster a mutual constructive relationship of mutual listening, openness, care, trust, and support. And you have agreed for this to be recorded, so I just wanted to make that clear. And so what I'm going to do is just offer listening to you, empathic listening, about whatever issues is up for you. And I think it was about XR, Switzerland, and so forth. So I'm here to listen, whatever you want to say.
Thank you. Yeah, from my background, I came into political activism 20 years ago, and I spent 8 years of my political activism in the beginning in a violent extremist group.
Okay, so maybe I'll just start modeling. So you've been for quite a long time. You've been in political activism, and I think you said, what, 20 years?
Yeah, I started in 2001.
Okay, and then recently you were part of a more violent group too, political group.
Yeah, I started my career as a political activist in a really cult-like organization in Switzerland with communist Maoist background, and it was really, it was a long path recovering from it. And but of course, I mean, today we're fucking up the planet. So the issue, the reason why I joined the political movement is still existing, and it's getting more frightening from day to day, on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so you were part of a sort of a political Maoist group, and it sounds like you got out and you had to sort of emotionally recover from it. But even still, you see the social problems, the global warming, etc., and those problems are still there, and it's you're really concerned, still very concerned about those issues.
Yeah, and I think I've really got embodied pain of the side effect of political activities, especially when it's about the topic of fighting all bad, like the capitalist system. And it's just in my personal experience, it gets violent pretty fast, and it's just a phenomenon. People are coming into this notion of that the ends justify the mean, so that we are the good ones, and everything which is on our side is okay, and everybody which is against us is just our enemy. So that's just a really strong dynamic inside of political movements.
So you're saying that inside of political movements that there's sort of an us versus them, there's the enemy over there, and you just see that as like a natural, not a natural, it's just part of in a lot of political organizations. And it sounds like you have concerns that kind of mindset leads to violence pretty quickly.
Not only concerns, I think it's just observation also in history. Also movements like Gandhi's movement, or Martin Luther King's movement in the States, they started non-violently with a really profound spirituality of non-violence, but they grow bigger and bigger, and the tensions got rougher and rougher, and in the end, they just the violence just burst out, and they weren't able to control it anymore. And I think that was also the end of those movements.
Mm-hmm. So it's more of an observation then, that you're just seeing that through history, movements that started as sort of nonviolence, that as they get bigger, they started moving towards more violence.
So I really believe it's really easy to start a movement non-violently, but the tough thing is really when a movement gets big and also successful, then it gets more and more difficult to let it stay non-violently.
Mm-hmm. So you see that it's easy to kind of start when you're small, being non-violent, but when it gets big, it's hard to kind of maintain that non-violent way of being.
Yeah. So I really believe that a political movement has to really embody this spirituality of non-violence on a really deep level.
Yeah, so you think that any political movement, if they want to be nonviolent, it has to be a really deep nonviolence, and so that's like a core insight or belief that you have.
Yeah, and when I first heard of Extinction Rebellion, it was really amazing because the principles, the conflict structures, also the demands, really, I really like them all. And from the theoretical framework, I really believe that Extinction Rebellion is kind of the answer to today's problems.
Mm-hmm. So when you first heard about Extinction Rebellion, kind of the way it was structured, the values, the principles, you kind of had it sort of you really liked it or kind of supported that.
And as I understand the principles, this notion of everyone and every part of everyone is welcome, for me, it's really this this view that we need everyone, that we for me those principles stands that we can't afford to exclude anyone, or we can't afford to exclude any part of anyone.
So you really resonate with that value of everyone is included, no exclusion, and that's a really important value that you have too. And Extinction Rebellion was sort of saying that everybody is welcome, and that's a value that you have too. So yeah.
Yeah, and there are many. Also, the holocratic structure, the conflict culture, which also says in the paper of an Extinction Rebellion that every conflict isn't something bad, but it's an important feedback about unmet needs, and it's a good thing. So it's like this notion of we embrace conflict.
So it sounds like a lot of the values that are on paper, at least, that you really resonate with it. It's like seeing conflict is not something to be avoided, but to embrace conflict, the inclusion part of it. So those values really resonate with you.
But when I met Extinction Rebellion Switzerland, I just came in a kind of activist group, which is just like usual activist groups in political movement. It's like action, action, action. Let's move forward. So we're really in a dangerous situation. We have to make fast. Come on, let's do it. And I was attending my first meeting, and I think the first question I had is like, how are we taking decisions here? Which principle?
Okay, so when you attended the first meeting, the energy was like a typical sort of a political action kind of organization, which is, we got to go fast, we got to make decisions fast, we got to take action, and sort of pushing forward. And then you start asking questions. It's like, well, what is the decision-making process here, and how does this work? It sounds like maybe you got some pushback or something.
yeah, and the reaction was like, the reaction from the group was like, why do we need that?
Mm-hmm.
We're just doing it. And I really insisted to find a form of decision making which, and the decision I really had to fight for it, because I sort of said, hey, I want to talk about this. How do we take decisions? And the facilitator of the meeting, he held the whole meeting, and the way how we take decisions was like the last point of the meeting. And then before the last point, he was like, oh, we don't have time for this last point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do it another time. It's too late now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got really angry, and I really made my point clear that this is just like, this is not something, yeah, that's, I mean, also this principle is we actively mitigate against power structures. It's really important. And so this whole question on how we make decisions is really basic. And I had to insist really hard to look with the group how we can take decisions. The consent principle, people didn't understand why the consent people, which is kind of the Extinction Rebellion DNA, it's just a consent principle. But the group said, oh no, we don't agree to that. We want a 75% majority way of taking decisions. And for me, it was a bit strange, because I mean, people use the name of Extinction Rebellion and the good reputation of Extinction Rebellion, but they really said, oh no, that's our thing. Let's do it our way. And we make it our way. And that really pissed me off, because I think it's really disrespectful against the whole work and conceptualization of the basics of Extinction Rebellion. And I think that was the point where the conflict started, because the guy who was facilitating this, and of course he was the aim of my criticism, I think that was the last point I spoke to him.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty fast he just wanted to kick me out of the structures.
Okay, so you were looking at, like, in the group, like, how is decision making done? You wanted that on the agenda. They put it at the end of the agenda and then kind of kicked it off the agenda because it wasn't enough time. You got like really upset about that, and really sounds like you voiced your upsetness and anger about it. And that then sounds like there was some dialogue in terms of what is the structure that for conflict, not conflict, for decision making. Is it consensus, or is it 75%? And then they kind of, you feel that they're saying that, oh, we're going to do it our way, it's our group, and you sort of like just taking the brand, the name of Extinction Rebellion, but turning it into their own thing. And then you feel that that's not right. And then it's like this caused a conflict with you and the facilitator in terms of just kind of how to move forward or how to resolve this. And you haven't talked to the facilitator since.
Yeah, we had only had online conversations. What I heard is that he quite early, he put on the agenda to exclude me from Extinction Rebellion.
Also, so I didn't say that part, that they're putting on the agenda to kick you out of and exclude you from XR Switzerland.
So the person who really liked it to not have a way of decision making, a formal way of decision making, and which was really pushing forwards just to go forward without asking for consensus. He was the guy who really then engaged pretty much on just getting rid of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the conflict began, and there were some people trying to mediate between me and this guy, and the problem was he wasn't willing to talk to me.
Okay, so the conflict is sort of progressed, that there was sort of some kind of a mediation attempt, but the guy that you were in conflict with is not willing to dialogue with you and take part in the mediation, and he just wants to get, kick you out.
And I think many people were just overwhelmed with this conflict, and the guy who wanted to kick me out, he's also the guy in Zurich, which is taking care of the finances. Maybe that's also a bit difficult if the guy controlling the finances wants to kick somebody out. So he's in some kind of critical role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but for me, I mean, I wanted to join Extinction Rebellion, and I wanted to join Extinction Rebellion, and I expected that when people call themselves Extinction Rebellion, they are according to the key principles and the organization structure of Extinction Rebellion. But actually, they didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you wanted to take part with Extinction Rebellion using their principles of inclusion and consensus making and holacracy, and sort of that whole set that's written down. And that's what you wanted to join, but you're feeling that the XR is not Switzerland is not kind of following that. They're sort of doing their own thing, and that you also feel that the person who you're in conflict with has maybe more power in the organization because he deals with the finances part. So maybe has more say in the organization than you do, and he's the one that's trying to kick you out, and he's not willing to take part. And I imagine it's very frustrating, maybe even feel a bit angry about it.
I think at the moment I'm more feeling helpless because I think it's clear mobbing behavior from this one guy, and I'm really into how to handle conflicts and group dynamics. I'm pretty much into it, and I really know if in a group people can't control the bullies will control the group.
Mm-hmm. So you see there's sort of a mobbing sort of mentality happening, and you're seeing him just in general as a principle. If the group can't control the bullies control the group. And so you're seeing sort of a mobbing mentality there.
Yeah, that's just a mobbing mentality, and I think there aren't people strong enough and with enough social skills to handle this. And so there are some few people which are doing a lot of damage for the whole movement inside of it. Yeah.
So you're valuing, it sounds like, conflict mediation facilitation, and you just feel that there's not a lot of people with these strong skills in the group, and that there's people kind of doing damage to the group because they're kind of being bullies or whatnot. And you're feeling hopeless, feeling a sense of hopelessness that there's any way forward, it sounds like.
And because I felt hopeless, I tried to get more support from London structures, from conflict support structures, also from Germany and the UK, but they didn't have any resources.
Mm-hmm.
So I actively asked for help, but didn't get any.
Mm-hmm. So you've been asking for help from other organizations, UK, Germany. but it seems like there's a shortage of resources for conflict resolution, and so it sounds like there was no help there, so no support for, yeah.
Yeah, and at the end, in Extinction Rebellion, you have these communication channels via the base or Mattermost, or Telegram, also chats, and I just insisted to confront Extinction Rebellion Switzerland, that we are not ready yet because we don't have the principles embodied, and that we need to work on inner structures and in an inner culture, so we don't have a regenerative cultures on the inside.
Mm-hmm. So you've been sort of campaigning for more of a regenerative culture, developing more regenerative culture in XR Switzerland, because you're feeling that that foundation isn't set. That sort of that regenerative culture, conflict mediation, facilitation, which you're valuing, hasn't been set there. It's kind of more of an activist go, quick decisions, just kind of push forward and kind of see the problems that are there. It sounds like maybe you've been advocating more for that those other ways of kind of building that regenerative culture first.
I think that was one thing, and also in Extinction Rebellion German, there was an addendum to the principle of everyone and every part of everyone is welcome, and the addendum was like that. XR Germany doesn't accept any sexist, racist, homophobic, or anti-Islamophobic behavior inside of the group.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that XR Germany added an addendum in terms of inclusion, and that they're not welcoming a series of different groups or anti-race or racist or whatever, a bunch of different categories that they're excluding.
And then I wrote an article that I see this critically, because all this, it's like anti-racism, anti-sexism is just linked to this whole political correctness culture, which can be really used to just shut people down. Because if people say anything you don't like, they can just be called sexist or racist or whatever, just be shut down. And I just told my concerns, and I thought that many people with more conservative views, when they see these terms of this, and they see this political correctness slang, they won't feel safe to join, because they made bad experiences with people being called out racist or sexist, or kind of anything which isn't identical to a kind of left-wing agenda.
Yeah, so you have concerns that all these terms like racist, sexist, and so forth, that if you don't like someone, you just put them in that category, and it's a way of excluding them, as well as conservatives might have experienced that they've been called racist, sexist before, and they're not going to join because they see these as kind of like code words for leftist political, political correctness, leftist political correctness.
And actually, as a reaction to this view, I've been started to be called a racist or a sexist, or and that's so it was like that actually happened. So
yeah, so you're actually experiencing it. They've put you you've been put into the racist, sexist category, and you're kind of being that you're kind of getting a taste of that yourself, being put into that category.
And they demanded some kind of censorship of this view of mine, and I just said no. And this led to a conflict with the online moderation team, which led of me being banned being kicked out of the communication structures and being called out inside of the structures as a sexist. I've been blamed of telling lies and harassing people because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So there were many personal attacks on inside communication channels. I didn't have the chance to say anything about them.
Mm-hmm. So through this communication channels, like with Mattermost, etc., that you've been banned from some of the groups, as well as, you know, sort of like attacked, you've been called a racist, a sexist, and kind of a troublemaker or whatever, and so they're kind of like excluding you. And it sounds like you don't feel like you have a chance to respond to kind of the criticisms or of you.
Yeah, they just blamed me of lying.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked back, what did I say that you see as a lie? I didn't get any answer.
Mm-hmm.
They blame me out publicly in these channels of harassing people. And when I asked,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what kind of behavior did you see which you interpreted as harassment? There was no reaction to that.
Mm-hmm. So you've been accused of lying and of harassing, and then you ask for like specifics, and then nobody responds to like the specific accusations.
Yeah.
Like with tangible, specific examples. Yeah. Sounds frustrating.
Yes, it's pretty frustrating. I think it makes me feel really helpless and far, far, far from safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So feelings of helplessness and insecurity and unsafeness and yeah.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't only make me feel totally unsafe, but all those people watching how they just how they can just make a defamation campaign against a member of XR being critical.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I also had someone I know from a long time. I asked him if he's open to ask back what really happened specifically. And he told me, no, he won't do that because he's pretty new to Extinction Rebellion. And he's afraid that he gets kicked out too because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're observing that because you've been kind of kicked out and criticized, that it kind of, and you're afraid, you have some fear about it, but that it kind of passes on to other people. People see you as sort of the example, and that's kind of what will happen to them. So maybe fear goes into other people, and you ask for some support, and you hear that the person says, hey, I'm afraid to do this because I might get kicked out too. So you have an example of that. So it kind of has a ripple effect through the...
Yeah. Just leads to a climate of fear and submission. And that's really dangerous.
Yeah. So there's a quality of fear and submission, just toe the line, and that you just see that whole mindset has a danger to it.
Yeah, I mean, nonviolent resistance is awesome if you have the skills to handle conflict. But if you don't have the skills to handle conflict, you shouldn't start any. And if you're really overwhelmed in conflicts inside your structures, maybe you shouldn't go into conflict with the military-industrial complex, because it won't be easier to handle the conflicts with the military-industrial complex than with some activist members like me.
Yeah, if you can't deal nonviolently with your own community, you better get that kind of worked out before you take on, conflict with the whole nonviolent conflict with the whole big industrial military complex, because it's going to be really tough there. You better have your own house in order, basically.
I really think that's a core principle that you just solve your inner conflicts before going out into other conflicts. So I think also people should solve out their inner conflicts before going to politics,
Mm-hmm.
or before going into activist groups, because it's great to get involved in politics, but it's not. Politics isn't a safe space where you can heal all your past traumas,
Mm-hmm.
because the whole world waits of just reparenting you in this whole field of politics. That's just not reality.
Yeah. So you really got to get your own self kind of worked out, your own inner conflict. And before you go into politics or into nonviolent direct action or whatever, you got to kind of get your own house in order, because you can't like try to solve your own internal problems out in the public sphere. Really, you got to get that nonviolent, personal tools and mindset together yourself first.
Yeah.
Maybe have that mindset and then bring that groundedness or whatever to the community, instead of trying to solve your own internal works by trying to tweak the society.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me it's really the whole situation with the ongoing climate catastrophe and all this ongoing conflict. I'm really panicking about that, and I'm really afraid of. I think the first impacts of the climate catastrophe will be more interpersonal conflicts, intergroup conflicts, and I think we really have to need to be prepared for that.
That the climate change, like maybe all the stresses and strains that creates, is going to create a lot of stress and strains on individuals, and which is kind of more conflicts that are going to get created, and that you actually have some real fear and panic about the potential of what can happen. Sounds like you have fear of the violence and the conflict and that can come out of that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for me to make people aware that our skills to handle conflict is the most important tool to take to really find a solution. Yeah. And just do not let this crisis just burst out in more conflict and wars.
Yeah, so you're really valuing conflict resolution skills and mindset, and that this is actually the most important place to start. And you're trying to spread that message too, like, hey, this is the place to start, is with our own internal conflict resolution.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been public. I think my conflict is really important because I think every conflict is important, and I really try to do everything possible to make this public so that more people can be aware of this conflict, so that also Extinction Rebellion gets more support for this conflict. But there's no much. Yeah, there's no so much momentum at that. So people have just like the attitude, oh no, conflicts, internal conflicts, they're not important.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important to solve the climate crisis, to ban fossil fuels or everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think many people, they are not aware how much conflict it would bring to our society if politicians would really decide things which would make a sustainable society possible.
Mm-hmm. So you see that your conflict, you're trying to make it public because this needs to be addressed. The XR needs to be able to address these conflicts, and sounds like you're not really seeing so much interest in really addressing this conflict, and you feel that people just don't realize that, just the amount of conflict that can happen in society with, changing the structures and so forth. So sounds like, yeah, you feel a bit hopeless too about just getting this sort of out there and getting people being aware of addressing these conflicts. And that's why you're kind of holding on to this conflict that you have, just not kind of sweeping it under the rug, so to speak, but kind of putting it out there in public and holding on to it.
Yeah, many people, they just say, yeah, we have to overthrow this toxic system or whatever, but I think the toxic system, we are the toxic system. It's not just the banks or the politicians or the big companies. It's people buying cheap meat and cheap flights to go to holidays. It's just people which want cheap gas. It's just not so easy. I think we're so much interconnected. And
yeah, so you just see the difficulty of all this. It sounds like you're talking about people. You see that people see this enemy out there, the system, and they don't see sort of their role and their responsibility in it. So it's like, hey, we have responsibility. You're kind of saying we all have responsibility at addressing these conflicts ourselves too, and taking responsibility for this larger what's happening. It's just not all out there with the system.
Yeah, and I think we really have to start to talk with our neighbors about that, with our friends, with everyone, and because we are all in this together, and I think many political activists, they don't talk with their family. They totally fail at convincing their family, their close loved ones, for changing to a sustainable life. But they somehow have the idea that politicians could do that by making like new laws or everything.
Yeah, so there's this quality of addressing, just people that you're around, being able to convince them or kind of relate with them more effectively to address these problems. And you're seeing that people aren't able to do that. Just like in XR, they're not able to work through this problem with you and them. There's a conflict. They're not able to work through that with their family and their own group, and just think that it's kind of out there is where the problem is. And you can just get the politicians to do it. It's going to solve the problem. And you're just saying that, hey, we have to be able to resolve the problems between ourselves kind of first. And so that's sort of what you're advocating for.
All together, I think.
All together. Yeah, we all have to do it together.
Yeah, but I think many people somehow believe that they can't somehow bring their own brother to a sustainable life, but they somehow have the illusion that the politicians could do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can't convince their own family, but they think that the politicians can do it instead of in getting their immediate family involved in it. So there's sort of again, that us and them sort of, I guess it's sort of, yeah.
Yeah, and those portraying people in power or rich people or as sort of magicians, which can just bring their magic wand and everything will change.
Mm-hmm. So there's no, you just see that people see the politicians as being able to just change things, kind of magically, instead of, hey, we got to take personal responsibility and sort of more of a personal approach too. Like, for example, so I guess I just wondering how you felt about it. I'm just trying to, feels like just some frustration about how people are trying to solve the problem instead of taking that personal responsibility and trying to work with their community, that they're kind of abstracting it a bit politically.
I really believe it's important to put pressure on politicians and put pressure on the economy to really change that. But it's also important to have a realistic views what they are able to do and what they are not able to do.
Mm-hmm. So just have a sense of realism about what is possible with politicians, or sort of what can be done, what can't be done. So just have more of a sense of realism.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, is there more?
Yeah, I think I would really, I think I really would like Extinction Rebellion be that organization which is able to build up a new culture. But I can't do this without the support of others.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it sounds like you would really like Extinction Rebellion to be able to do what it's saying, creating this regenerative culture, conflict resolution, and you sort of have hope that it could do that, but you can't do it yourself. Sounds like you may be needing support, would kind of ask for support for bringing in these skills and this mindset, and just maybe even feel a bit lonely kind of with your quest.
Yeah, it's for me personally, I don't feel lonely because I've got many friends and many people active outside of Extinction Rebellion. I've got my surroundings, but it's kind of frustrating that it's more disempowering for me, or it was more disempowering for me to put my energy in Extinction Rebellion, that I got some more empowerment back from joining Extinction Rebellion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of this feeling of disempowerment. I mean, it sounds like you want to put your energies into Extinction Rebellion, kind of with the principles and values that it has, but you're feeling disempowered by it. And you have your own community of friends, but you did want to sort of kind of connect with Extinction Rebellion and work on the values that it has and address these issues. Mm-hmm. So kind of that hopelessness again with Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, and maybe I'm also a bit concerned for other people going with these hopes of finding an Extinction Rebellion organization which they can feel safe and which empowers them. I think I also feel concerned about others just putting lots of energy in a project where the whole mobbing dynamics are just too strong to handle it.
Yeah, it sounds like then you have concern that, hey, other people are going to be joining. They've got hope in it, but then sort of the mobbing mentality is, they're going to make them hopeless too. So maybe some real concern for their well-being. And it sounds like maybe you have some background with that, having been in that almost like a political cult, and you just see the damage that was done there. So maybe some concerns about other people kind of going through that.
And I think I know many people spending a long time in their lives in political activist structures. And I'm not the only one which just came out and say, hey, no, I don't do this anymore, because people are just getting crazy inside of that. And it's not, people are just getting in like, I think it's like an agitated depression.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow you're depressed and you're overwhelmed with all the bad things going on. And it's just like a flight into activities. It's just like this.
Okay, so you kind of there's sort of this dynamic that you're depressed because of everything that's going on, but you just kind of cover it up with activity. There's just a lot of motion, but underneath it is a lot of sort of depression.
Yeah, and those agitated depressions are also linked to aggressive behavior, getting yeah, blaming others first and really getting emotionally out of control. So I think it can get counterproductive pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. So I really see the counterproductiveness of sort of that direction. And it sounds like you've experienced it personally too, and then people kind of get fed up with it eventually.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean,
Okay. So I just was here to, I've been looking at how XR might be more effectively, address conflict. So I created a Facebook event for the 31st, January 31st, to do an empathy cafe around it. So that's kind of why, I saw that you were having this conflict. That's why I reached out to you, just to model empathic listening, and also to offer that whoever the person is you're in conflict with, I'd be welcome to, invite them into an empathy circle with you, to actually talk it out and use the empathy circle, process to have a dialogue about it. So I'm offering that. I don't know if they would take part, but we can try reaching out to them, if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd really be open to that, because I think
Okay, cool.
that's what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
We need more dialogue. We got to train ourselves in that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we'll work at that. I'll take this video, post it to YouTube and Facebook, and, people can be watching this and just kind of hear, how the process works. The pre-circle, which is, just the facilitator just listens to the parties who are involved, in a conflict. And then once they've been heard, they can come together and empathically dialogue with each other. And it can be supported with a facilitator. So I'm glad to support that. So it sounds like you're willing to do it, and I guess that's it. Then I'll just stop the recording and